Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on this gloriously sunny day. I'm Emily Beanie, Chief Curator of the Legion of Honor, and Barbara Wolf, Curator in charge of European paintings. And today it is my delight to introduce Dr. Louise Chu, Associate Curator of Ancient Art. We'll hear from her today about Greek vase paintings in the permanent collection and some of the surprises that they contain. And I should mention that this is the seventh in a lecture series, A Closer Look, taking place on the second Saturday of each month. So please do come back and join us again and again here in the Gun Theater at the Legion to learn more about the treasures in our collections that belong to all San Franciscans. Before proceeding, I'll go ahead and share our institutional land acknowledgement. The Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco occupy unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of what is now the San Francisco Peninsula. The Greater Bay Area is also ancestral territory of other Ohlone peoples, as well as the Miwok, Yakuts, and Patwin. We acknowledge, recognize, and honor the indigenous ancestors, elders, and descendants whose nations and communities have lived in the Bay Area over many generations and continue to do so today. We respect the enduring relationships that exist between indigenous peoples and their homelands. We are committed to partnering with indigenous communities to raise awareness of their legacy and engage with the history of the region, the impacts of genocide, and the dynamics of settler colonialism that persist. Lincoln Park, where the Legion of Honor was founded in 1924, operated as city cemetery from 1868 until 1898. When the park was created, many of the burials were relocated, but the majority of them were not. Please join the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco in honoring the memory of the thousands of individuals still buried in this land. So, Dr. Louise Chu is Associate Curator of Ancient Art at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. A polymath who speaks or reads 9 languages, ancient and modern, Louise completed her PhD in comparative literature, English, Latin, and Greek at the University of California, Berkeley, where she also taught for a decade in the classics department. Since 1987, she has served in a variety of roles at the Fine Arts Museums, primarily in the Ancient Art Department, where she has collaborated with Marcus Distinguished Curator in Charge, Renée Dreyfus, on over 20 exhibitions, including the recent blockbuster Ramses the Great and the Gold of the Pharaohs, presented at the De Young in 2022, and the upcoming The Etruscans from the Heart of Ancient Italy, a landmark project presenting new scholarship and newly unearthed objects from ancient Etruscan culture. Louise is co-founder with Renée of the museum's Ancient Art Council, and in addition to her curatorial work, she has published in various scholarly journals and conference proceedings, most especially on poets of the Augustan age. Please join me in welcoming her to the podium.
Thank you, Emily, kindly for your introduction and for inviting me to participate in our A Closer Look lecture series to celebrate the 100th birthday of this gorgeous building, the Legion of Honor. Let me get the first slide for you. And also thank you all for attending and joining us in this celebration. Here is, of course, I have to, talk about the museum, we have to start with the Spreckels. And here is a slide of the founders of the museum, Mr. and Mrs. Spreckels. So if I may pay tribute to the couple for their generous and forward-looking gift to the city of San Francisco, the Legion of Honor, a one-of-a-kind institution doing double duty as a museum and a war memorial. And perhaps as the Legion approaches its second centenary on this coming November 11th, it will assume a third mantle as the Temple of Peace. And here we have Mrs. Spreckels relaxing at home with a cup of tea. And on the bottom slide, a photo, you have her with her children when they were young, and at the top is Mr. Spreckels, who basically paid for everything. And of course, he's looking rather bemused at his own offspring here. Oh, thank you. And so this is quite a blissful scene. And speaking of blissful, here we have the Spreckels painter, Pellice, which celebrates the Apollonian triad, which happens to be Leto, the mother of the twins Apollo and the god and goddess Apollo and Artemis. And they are in a very domestic setting because of the, you can see the column reaching from floor to ceiling, and also sort of what looks almost like now the roof with the parmet across at the top, defining this sort of private space. And you see Apollo seated in a wonderful, really ornate chair with his left hand on a cithara and his right hand holding a fiale towards his sister, who sort of serves, like Ganymede to Zeus. So she's the wine pourer for her brother, and the mother looking proud at them. Oops, there you go. So together with the Spreckels painter, Pellice, we also have the pen painter, Hydria, and they pretty much shows the same scene with this trio at home, and it's very similar because once again you've seated, minus the mother, mind you, but here are the twin gods with Apollo once again holding, it's really, the cithara, the fiale, and she's pouring, and you can actually see wine coming out of the oinokoe, and of course then that rather greedy fawn looking sort of like just hoping that she'll drop a drop from the wine jug, and it just happened to stray into its mouth. Now, as far as sort of shapes of vessels go, the hydria as a shape really surpasses other Greek vase shapes, not only in sort of its handsomeness, but also precisely because of its shape, it's very challenging for anyone who wants to paint on it. It requires that the gifted hand, not just a gifted hand, I'm pretty sure it has to be a very steady hand of a painter to arrange and then position and then paint, do the painting on the pot that you have it's a shelf of the shoulder coming down, so you have to accommodate that shape. So it's just amazing we have this as a pair, and of course the juxtaposition of these two vases confirms the creative ingenuity of the painter, at whose hands even the same subject can vary and be reinvented. Now, as this sort of this threesome, the trio of the Apollonian triad, is a popular theme in Greek art. I thought I'll show you an earlier version where they are actually standing, and here, of course, once again, the mother and then Apollo in the middle, and his sister. And I forgot to remind you that she's wearing a quiver as the goddess of the hunt and the mistress of the wild. And here you have not just a deer, but also a panther as part of all their sort of a trademark. Now, just thought to sort of flood you with more images of Apollo. Here we have the seated Apollo, and he is really the goddess of music, dance, and poetry. And so that's why you usually see him holding a cithara in his hand. And next to him, we'll see what is in our collection marble, unfortunately headless, but still a gorgeous marble statue of him. And what you have here is just a torso. However, we still see curls coming down the shoulder. And of course, you can see that, they both are, this body that's sort of, I would say, muscular, but not hunky. So we have, and then the next one is, of course, they're both from the Vatican Museum, and that's sort of the defining sort of image or statue for his role. And once again, this is him now standing up as a marble figure in a three-dimensional way, holding a kithera. And the other one is the famous Apollo Belvedere at the Vatican. And what is so wonderful is you can see him here, not just in a standing pose, but suddenly they both sort of have weight on one foot, but you can certainly see this is the action that just finished, his pulling the bow string to shoot an arrow. So the arrow has gone off, and his left hand that he's holding out would have the bow, and then the right hand is just the hand that released the string. So you capture here, it's not so much the moment of when he's shooting, but it's when the action is done and you have to sort of construct around it, what happened before and after. So in a sense, Apollo can astride more than two rows, not just as the kithera player, as well as the lead of the muses, the musigetes, but he is also the far shooter. And in the Homeric hymn to Apollo, it basically begins with far shooting Apollo, whom gods tremble before. And you can see that he may look mild-mannered, seated, playing his kithera. There's also that other side of him that's, is a bit more motion-packed. Now, oh yes, this one. I remember visiting Petworth House, and I just remembered this gorgeous Apollo kithera rhodos, as in, he's holding his kithera. But what is so amazing is we have an ancient example of a plectrum. So any one of you who are into music, who are musicians, should look at this. We actually have a marble depiction of an ancient plectrum. So if you know anything more, let me know. Now, on to his sister Diana, or, Diana to the Romans and Athena to the Greek. She is, other than his wine pourer, she's also goddess of the hunt and mistress of the wild and of the wild animals. And unlike the paintings on the terracotta vases we just saw, this statue is animated, so you can see the leg are, one in front of the other, as though she's about to step forward into the next space. And in her right hand, she's reaching back, it's bent, and she's reaching back for an arrow, just about to take it out of her quiver. And she is also, and then her left hand is holding the antler of a stag. And now to heighten the animation, you can see what the painter, the sculptor did. Her short garment is sort of singed. It appears that it's first of all, it's clinging. The drapery is clinging to her body, and then it's singed, girded at the waist, so that it follows the body contour and her movements. So this is definitely a statue in motion, and even on the mosaic, the artist did try to capture in a two-dimensional way Diana sort of caught in mid-action, about to draw her arrow, her bow, to shoot an arrow. Now, gods in the ancient world, well, the Greek and Roman world, possess immense power and sort of slightly peppered with vindictiveness. I don't know, a sort of mommy dearest kind of, character, personality. And the Roman poet Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, are, when you see the tales in his long epic poem, the tales are all filled with stories where immortals are, transformed into something else, either because for their virtue as a reward, or for their transgression, or even as an escape from something terrible things that are about to happen to them. So hence these gods could be fearful, even someone like a virgin huntress, Artemis. So this bell crater tells the death of, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you would know the story, tell the death of Actaeon, the hunter Actaeon, and his crime. Let's begin with that. His crime really is that while he just accidentally, shall we say that, beholds the goddess while she's bathing naked, and surprises her. And his punishment, while the transgressor is on the run from his own hounds, Artemis aims an arrow at him and shoots him, as you can see here. Now, there's another version, I don't know if it's any less gruesome, that he is transformed into a stag and then pursued by his own hounds and sort of torn apart. Now, the painter of this part cleverly conflated the two stories. So you have her shooting at him, and then the hounds are, pounding on him and probably, tearing him to, or biting him and tearing him into pieces. Or, and so we have a bit of both, in the sense of you have a clothed goddess aiming an arrow at a barely draped mortal whom the hounds are attacking at the same time while he's being shot at. So in the sense that, don't mess with the gods. And I'm convinced that one doesn't really need to know the myths, the stories, the history of the Greeks and the Romans to appreciate the images on the art. Now think of what we can appreciate without sort of preconception or knowledge. First of all, sort of the shape of the vase, right? This is a bell crater because it looks like a bell, although it's a crater like a wine container. And the potter, made it on a wheel. Then it's baked in the kiln, et cetera, and then the painter worked on it, as in painting the surface. Now, and bear in mind that this vessel is like most vessels, it is in the round, it's not sort of just flat. And so the painter has to accommodate the surface to fit the image. So you have the huntress, Artemis, standing with weight on her back leg, up again, about to stretch, stretching the string, about to shoot an arrow, and she's definitely aiming at her victim, or rather the culprit. And Actaeon, on the other hand, is practically in a yoga pose, right? He has both legs, the weight in both legs, and his, about left and right on his left arm, and he's raising his right arm like that. If you do yoga, you would know, right? So he's sort of, and his opposite arm up, so stretched like that, and anticipating death. And the hounds are all over him. It's more like, at this point, nibbling at him and then tearing him apart. And one of them is perched on his head and shoulder. Now, what emotion is generated here? Are we supposed to cower in fear? Do we feel the urge to help him, or do we sort of laugh nervously? And this is a far cry from the wine pouring, or should we say demure, Artemis on the Spreckels and pen painter vases that we just saw from the museum collection, or the seated Apollo plucking his kithera with the plectrum. So it's it is amazing what what any one of us can see in any at any time on even just one same image. Oh, and also the side B. I'm sorry, the image is a bit small. I should have made it bigger. But side B of this crater portrays one of the earliest Greek representations of the half-goat god Pan. You can see him on your right. And giving the artist the conventional name, the pan painter, and hence our earlier hydria, the pan painter. Now, and so it's also, he's also identified as the hand responsible for painting the pan painter hydria in our collection. And in case you're wondering, who was the Spreckels painter, pan painter, etc., there are very few Greek vases that were signed, and even if they were signed, we really don't know much about the background of any single, individual painters. We have more names than we know something about when they might have, practiced their skill or their profession, but we don't even know their beginning dates and their end date, So what we have instead is, it's theory under close and really years of intense study, scholars of Greek vases in the 20th century began to recognize a painter's signature, like a hand, like similar things that they would do, or some kind of, I want to say, probably not the right word, mark that they leave on a pot or something. So that's some kind of signature with an individual and distinguished artistic or stylistic personality. And then these scholars assign a nickname, I put it in quotes, a nickname, such as the pan painter, the Spreckels painter, based on the find spot where the vessel was found, or the current location as in a museum, or ownership, as in our case, the Spreckels painter, or a subject of a particular vase. So this one, because this is pan appearing the first time on a pot, so this is called the pan painter, and it's named. This is the first pot that was given the name, and then we have our hydria, which obviously you saw that there was no pen there. It's just the trio of mother and the two twins. Now, back to the hydria. So this water jug, a hydria, captures a picture of bliss of a perfect ancient Greek family situated within their own home. You have the young father on the right, standing and looking over his family, his wife, who's seated, holding her baby son and handing it to the nursemaid. And the loom behind the nanny, of course, confirms the role of the mistress of the house, in addition to spinning, weaving, sewing, and running, the household. The important duty of a Greek wife included bearing children. And the men, of course, the, is, needless to say, is the protector of the family and shouldered with the responsibility of defending his city. Now, from family, we go on to the next family. Now, this deep drinking cup called a skiphos because it's about, 4 or 6 inches high. This drinking cup depicts Telemachus, the son of Odysseus, holding 2 spears in his left hand and stands towering over his mother Penelope as though reproaching her as she sits in a chair with her legs crossed and her head bowed in mourning and probably longing for her husband, Odysseus. Now, this is home life on Ithaca while the husband, father, is still absent in Troy. And behind them is the loom, symbol, of course, of the mistress of the house, as we just saw on the pan painter Hydria, depicting the death of Actaeon. Now, this is a serious loom. What is amazing that we can see work in progress, we can see the fringe, the edge of the fabric, and we can see on the border of the weaving a parade of animals. So from the left is likely, it looks like a winged horse like Pegasus and a winged man with what look like a winged shoe, so likely Hermes, and then another, Pegasus, and another seems like winged things. So you do have not just Greek, but also Eastern, ancient Near Eastern kind of symbols as well. And this is, of course, a domestic scene of the interior house, definitely defined by the loom. So while Penelope faithfully awaits the homecoming of her husband, she remains committed and steadfast, working at the loom while fending off the suitors. Now, if you know the story in certainly the end of the Odyssey, there's the suitors in the house, eating and drinking and consuming everything in her larder and probably in her coffer. So for an ancient audience looking at this image, it is about fidelity, loyalty, commitment, family, and even the coming of age of Telemachus. After all, he too will embark on his own odyssey in search of his father, as you can see in Homer's Iliad. There is, however, tension looming over the loom. The essence of the Odyssey the essence of the Odyssey is represented on this one vase. Penelope's feminine task and wiliness. The story, I just mentioned the story in which she weaves a shroud during the day and unravels her work every night when she has, because of her promise to the rowdy suitors that she will only marry one of them when he has finished her task. So the Odyssey is not just about the homecoming of Odysseus after the Trojan War, and all the travails endured and survived by him in order to reach Ithaca and his own family. It is also about the story of Penelope outsmarting and surviving the suitors, unwelcome guests who eat off the estate in the absence of the master of the house. So just as we are lulled into such homemaking images, you're lurking behind domestic bliss are sort of threats and dangers capable of unraveling the home. And far shooter, mistress of wild, Apollo, Artemis, now suddenly they come alive on this red figure calyx crater. The twin gods have shed their mask, and Apollo is no longer seated. he's not only standing, he's busy shooting dead the children of Niobe. And his sister, too, is working hard on straining her bow. So as the story goes, probably we're more familiar with Ovid's metamorphoses, Niobe boasts to Leto that she has 12 more children than the god does. And since Leto only has Apollo and Artemis, whereas she has more, or I actually always love John Dryden's translation. There she a mother was of 2 at most, only the 7th part of what I boast. So Leto only have a 7th of number of her children. And then, of course, the next thing we know, the other true self of the twin gods has taken over and reduced the number of Niobe's children to null. And to add insult to injury, now, and Niobe herself eventually is changed into stone, but while before that, here is, while chaos reigns, the mother is sort of punished for her hubris. Now, I guess she should have boasted to Leto, that she herself may have 7 times more children than Leto. The divine twins, however, are far superior than her own for being among the pantheon of the Greek deities. But alas, she didn't say that, and domestic bliss ending in tears. And I want to show you this. I don't want to say. It is after a sarcophagus but this is really a really gorgeous sarcophagus depicting the whole story of the massacre at the hands of really at the hands of hubris and nemesis, and it's in one fell swoop. This is an action-packed marble sarcophagus from almost the 2nd century A.D. On which the sculpture sort of arranges the killing and the dead bodies with compactness in space and in time on really 2 tiers, on the trough and on the lid. So down below is the killing, like action happening at the same time as fast as the eye can see, and above it is just the dead body strewn all over. And this is an incredibly powerful image exhibiting the wrath of the gods, because what has happened was, really took place in a split second, while the deadly result now we can see is carved in stone for eternity. So we come face to face with the other side, the destructive and vengeful side of their godhead, and the polar opposite of a calm-seated deity. And I couldn't resist but showing this. This is the Nile-bit room in the Uffizi, with which is really the slaughter. These are individual sculpture dating to the 2nd century A.D. This is Roman marbles. Each one it depicts the killing or the death of one of her children. And so this is an entire sculptural group, but displayed at the Uffizi in Florence, and it's so almost like a cinematic fashion. And you see that it's illustrate the tragic tale of hubris and boasting, and the subsequent punishment by complete annihilation. Of course, and I showed the slide with her hugging her youngest child. And this is the focus of the group when she tries to protect her youngest daughter, as you can see her terrified sort of eyes and the gaze looking upwards towards heaven, where the gods are. And it's sort of another sort of scene where you have this sort of mixed messages from the god. And here we have Dionysus on on the left, he's seated on a gorgeous cleané, a couch. And by the way, I didn't forget to point out, you should really look at furniture depicted, especially on a Greek vase painting, because some of it's really amazingly current. They look almost modern, and they are really, really nicely, you can see the furniture's nicely made and well done and really beautifully done, but also just from the painting itself, you can see what real life would have looked like. And this one, you can see on the legs, it's a four-legged kind of couch or cleané where you can basically lie across it. And this one, you can see the legs with the white images, and Renée would correct me, and assuming it would be inlaid with ivory, and the wood is assuming black. I don't know if it's painted or it could be ebony. So a lot of these would be using either expensive wood or inlaid with ivory, which is of course not native to Greece or even Rome for that matter. So it is an imported material. And here is Dionysus, the god of wine, on the right-hand side. And here he is seated too on a wonderful sort of cross-legged kind of folding stool without a back, but a folding stool that you probably have one at home. And here he is in the same pose, seated. Sort of surrounding him, of course, is just this group of maenads and satyrs playing music, drinking. This is all about reverie, about letting go of yourself, I suppose. And perhaps sometimes even reaching frenzy. Now, I want to show you this side because you think it's so calm and placid. Here is Dionysus. This is a calyx. This is actually called Dionysus cup. That is a black figure calyx, and the red is sort of especially a different red from what we are familiar with in Greek red figure vases. And this is made by the painter Achilles. And it is, you think this is calm, as I just said, but just a word of warning about the god. So he may be seen sailing on a boat, and the dolphins swimming around the boat. This is calm sea and smooth sailing, except that the dolphins were once humans. And to understand better how we got to this stage, I'll quickly sum it up for you. And this is from Homeric Hymn 7 to Dionysus. So here is a young Dionysus sort of on the shore of a barren sea. Etruscan pirates out there on the water in a ship spot him. They come on shore, grab him, and bring him back on board. And they try to tie him with ropes, and the ropes become undone. Now, only one of them, the steersman, out of all the Etruscan sailor, makes the remark, he's like the gods who have their dwellings in Olympus. We should let him go. Well, his warning is ignored, and suddenly a wind blows into the sail, and the wine-dark sea is now filled with wine, and I quote, sweet to drink. And vines start to grow with clusters of grapes on it, on top of the sail, and we don't see that. This is before Dionysus, looking calm here, but Dionysus himself turns into a lion, and he also conjure up a bear on the ship. So the pirates leap into the water, and as they were leaping into the water, they are transformed into dolphins. Now the good thing is the god of wine did remember the steersman and saved him from a fate worse than death. So there's that side of Dionysus as well, and we can definitely see it. It's a bit like the Niobe story, the story of Pentheus being torn apart. Now, I don't know if any one of you saw our Ancient Art Council reading of the Bacchae, the dramatic reading of Bacchae several years ago, which is the Euripides play, which talks about the whole play is building up to this scene, I think, and it's really Pentheus who, the next king of Cadmus, next king of Thebes, and Cadmus is the current king, and he sort of, it's uncle and nephew situation, right? No, sorry, it's a grandson. I'm sorry, it's his mother, Agawe. Sorry, this is his grandfather is the king, and there is no son, so the grandson was supposed to inherit the kingship. Now, but he, for whatever reason, he is against the god Dionysos, who sort of just came from the east to Thebes, where his mother's tomb is located. And also, on top of that, he wanted to establish his Dionysiac mysteries with his followers, the Bacchae. But Semele, his mother, who's dead, of course, and buried, her sister, who's Pentheus' mother, so Pentheus and Dionysus are first cousin, and sort of refused, and they denied Dionysus' parentage, that his father is just a mere mortal and not the god Zeus. So Pentheus somehow is tempted, even though he condemns the whole thing, he's tempted to witness this mystery, and so he convinces Dionysus to bring him there. So fast forward to the day or the night of the mystery. So he's seated on top of a very tall pine tree, and he's like a voyeur watching everything, whatever the women or the Bacchae were doing. Then Dionysus sort of, I guess, shows the women to the tree, and they manage to bring him down and not just kill him, but they also proceed to tear him apart limb by limb. So, and that's not enough. So there his mother, still in some kind of Dionysiac trance, thinking this is just a wild beast that we catch with our bare hands, and now we've torn him apart. So she's so proud of these women hunting, achievement, that he impaled the head on a thyrsus, which is this sort of long stick that the Dionysus followers use, and they a lot of time put a thyrsus on, a pine cone on top. So impale his head on it, and as they go back into the city, and she's so eager to show her own father, King Cadmus, look what we women did. We just, with our bare hands, tore apart an animal. And then, of course, she didn't know that, oh my God, this is my son I just tear apart. And it's all no thanks to Dionysus. So here we have, of course, the scene where the women are tearing him apart, and even though it's gruesome, it's sort of tasteful. Here, I mean, they're about probably to tear his head off, but you can see he only has his top torso and his intestines sticking out. And then, of course, you have, and I think that woman holding the drapery, the scarf, is his mother. But then, and my favorite is, do you see at the far, your left, sorry, thank you, far left, the woman far left with her right hand holding his leg. So, the bottom part of it is all torn apart. I probably shouldn't go into it. But anyway, if it's depicted of art, it's tasteful. So I'm showing you, so it, in a sense that what we realize here is that, that all this dismemberment is, of course, done by the agents of death, who are these Theban women, including his own mother. But meanwhile, Dionysus is like the director, masterminding the drama until his will is done. Pentheus is punished. And well, anyway, don't mean to scare you. So there's another one from the Louvre where you can see him about to be torn apart. That's just a lid of a vessel with a lid. and I just thought I'll show that. I don't know why I like gruesome images, but now this is one of our own large amphora with a lid, and I call it the War and Peace amphora. It's just a vase for storing either food or like grains or wine even. And now when we think about the fine line between a symposium and a Bacchic reverie, perhaps we can understand such antagonistic themes of war and peace on this large Attic Greek amphora by the Leagros group painter. And now side A in the middle tells us the brawling between Ajax and Odysseus over the armor of Achilles. And side B is a Dionysiac scene with the bearded god. You can see now he's standing up and not seated, and once again amid his devotees of Maenads and satyrs dancing and playing the double flutes, and with vines sort of intertwining among them. The story, just a quick recap of the story of Ajax and Odysseus. Now, Ajax rescued the body of Achilles from the hands of the Trojans. This is still the Trojan War. There's no longer in the Iliad. And however, he had to compete with the other Greek warrior Odysseus for the armor of Achilles. And for whatever reason, the decision was for the two heroes to debate with each other for the arms of slain Achilles. And the lot they cast fell to Ajax to speak first. So Telamonian Ajax is the greater of the two warriors. I mean, Ajax out of the two, Ajax and Odysseus, Ajax is the greater of the two, and more deserving because of his incomparable courage and skill, and also his sort of strength. He rescued Achilles' body from the battlefield to retrieve it for a proper funeral. Now, alas, the eloquence and pretty words uttered by Odysseus persuaded the Greeks to award him the armor instead of awarding it to Ajax. And this caused Ajax such blinding rage that it drove him mad and eventually to suicide. So the confrontation side A here in the middle has now taken on sort of a Bacchic sense of self-destruction. Heroic activities utterly undermined. The victory of the Trojan War, brings peace with an ironic twist that, the hero ended up in self-destruction. And I just want to show you, with a similar image on this onlooker in Paris, and this is again showing Odysseus and Ajax brawling, and it really gives us a stronger clue to our amphora as to what is happening and who these characters are painted here, because the names of the two heroes are actually, it's your left, are actually written on the top, and identifying who they are, and so it does help also as like a tag for the scene painted on this vase and on ours too. Now, this colossal volute crater is 3.5 feet tall, and every surface is decorated in true Greek South Italian fashion versus the traditional traditional artistic approaches on mainland Greek examples. And its size really caters to elaborate compositions derived from, these compositions could be from mythology, from theatrical scenes, or theater, from funerary customs and monuments. And so this vase itself, this volute crater, would have been placed on a tomb, acting as a tomb marker. And you can see the tapering body of the vase itself, and I'm sorry that it's tapering like this, really. And unfortunately, you can't see the bottom part because it's sitting, the foot that's hiding it. And this body, its tapered body, finally narrows and terminates in a hole to allow libations, i.e. mostly liquids, to be poured in the mouth and then to pass through and flow down to the tomb as offering to the deceased. And the image in the middle register, so you can see clear, I just have it, I love this scene, I'm pretty sure Renee loves this scene too. The image in the middle register is the epic, is taken directly, borrowed directly, just taken directly from the sulking of Achilles sulking in the tent, and the appearance of Iris, the winged Iris to his right, the messenger of the gods, urging him to rejoin the fray of the Trojan War, and this is directly from Homer's Iliad. So the Greeks, unfortunately, have been dying since Achilles retreated into his tent. And in addition to add in, I mean, it's really bad, Hector, the Trojan prince Hector, killed his friend and companion Patroclus, who went out to fight wearing Achilles' armor. Now, Achilles, he is the biggest, baddest sulk in all of Western literature. There are intense, almost pivotal moments in both images and, images and art, as well as text, as in, poetry or poems. There are intense and pivotal moments that playing hide and seek with the onlooker or the reader, and then the plot thickens. So let me show you something. This is before the Trojan War happened. This is also a Baltimore painter, volute crater in the Metropolitan Art Museum, and it shows the pre-Trojan War story. So in the middle, seated, is the Trojan prince Paris, who is the younger brother of Hector, and his head is turned backwards, towards Hermes, and you can see Hermes with his. You can identify him definitely with his traveler stick and walking stick and his winged sandals, So Hermes, the god Hermes of messenger, etc., brought the three goddesses for a beauty contest over which Paris is to preside as the arbiter elegantiae. The goddesses present are on your far left is Aphrodite seated with Eros, her son Cupid Eros in front of her, and on your far right, holding a scepter and seated and next to Hermes is Hera, the wife and sister of Zeus. And then one register below with the shield is what's her name? Athena, with her, wearing her helmet and shield. Now, not smelling a trap, Paris eventually decides on who is the fairest of them all. And Aphrodite cleverly bribes him with the promise of the wife of Menelaus, who is, of course, Helen. And I just always love to quote Christopher Marlowe's one-liner in Dr. Faustus about Helen. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? So here is the judgment of Paris, a rather frivolous activity, And it unleashes the fury of the Trojan War with its attending suffering, agony, and death, and total destruction of Troy, the kingdom of Troy and its people. So the next moment is Briseis. Some of them who have read the Iliad would, yes, it is the Iliad, would know that, in war, when you win, you have, not like now, we can't do that. In the olden days, your compensation would be these war prizes, right? You get, silver, gold, whatever, and including chattel, including, cattle and women and children. So the exterior, this is a calyx, but this is the exterior of the cup and not the, this is the exterior of the cup, the wall of the cup. Shows Briseis, who is one of Achilles' war prizes, being led away from his tent, seated is Achilles, being led away from his tent to Agamemnon's, who is the king of Mycenae and the leader of the Greek allies, going off to Troy to bring Helen back and then destroy, completely wipe out Troy. Now, so he is the, he himself, of course, is, so there's Agamemnon wanting her back, and so you can see Briseis sandwiched between two heralds. Curious enough, these are named in the Iliad, and Agamemnon, instead of going to the tent to claim back Briseis himself, he actually sends two other people, two messengers, to do the bloody deed for him. So there is a problem identifying this middle character. Is it, Agamemnon himself, and this is a bearded man, so it has to be probably some hero, some older person leaning on a staff, and then looking at Achilles, who's seated on another elaborate stool with cushion. You see that zigzaggy design is sort of, it has fabric on it to soften, the seat. And he, sitting on a stool and with a cushion, and under, is about a canopy. You're talking about Trojan War, you're in the war, and he has this elaborate tent and elaborate inside of the interior. So the greatest of all Greek heroes, i.e. Achilles, is not a happy man. The situation is only adding fuel to his sulk. King Agamemnon has taken back the war prize he has allotted to Achilles, i.e. the captive Briseis, in order to replace his own war prize, who has to be returned to her father. So this is really sort of the beginning of the great sulk of Achilles. Thereafter, he stays in his tent and refuses to participate in the fighting against the Trojans. And of course, the next sort of moment is just like the emperor we just saw, the museum's emperor, where he's sulking his tent. I just want to show you this bone carving of him it's a little like a photograph or of him. So sulking in his tent, and again, with his hand over, with the drapery over his head, and unless Agamemnon rectifies the injustice done to Achilles, the greatest of all Greek heroes or warriors refuses to budge and return to the battlefield to help the Greeks. Now, he is here seated, holding the drapery up over his head, and he has given up. His sword and shield are on his left untouched, and his helmet and cuirass are, curled up around his feet. It's not just Briseis now, because by now Hector has killed Patroclus, who is very dear to Achilles. So the sort of ultimate moment is the penultimate scene in the Iliad, the ransom of Hector's body. So he did come out after, what's the Greek name of Vulcan, the god of fire? Hephaestus, thank you. Made him, his shield and his armor, it's a whole very big deal and absolutely gorgeous. And so he basically goes out and hunts down Hector and kills him. But then and you probably remember, he's so angry at him that he drags him behind his chariot around the walls of Troy 3 times. So then he brings it back to the camp, to his tent, I should say. So here we have King Priam, who's the father of Hector, King Priam of Troy, undertaking a secret mission to Achilles' tent to redeem the body of his dead son Hector. Now the image here captures precisely the entrance into the tent of his worst enemy, the murderer of his son. So Priam with his servants behind him bearing gifts, and the procession of Trojans are walking towards the foot of the Clinae. Look at this Clinae. This couch. Can imagine this in your own living room, and it's amazing. Not just the woodwork, the inlays and whatnot, but just the fabric itself. And you can see sort of like he's cushioned as well. It makes a very painful scene beautiful. So there he is, the greatest of all Greek heroes, lying on his Clinae and cutting meat. He has in his right hand a knife, and in his left hand a hunk of meat. And because he just in the Iliad, I think he just finished his supper when the procession comes in, and he has his cupbearer behind him pouring him wine. And I don't know what's it called, but I call it a coffee table in front of him. By the way, that's not a stool that's up, because it's rather flat image. It's really in front of it rather than under the bed. It's a coffee table with meat, not tongues, by the way, not Hector's tongue, with meat hanging off just to show that it's food and he's really eating. And probably this is the first time he eats in all of the Iliad. And let me just show you another image in Toledo, which is just a bit earlier. It's a black figure, emperor, and it's just a bit earlier than the previous one. And it's a very similar scene. So it's not like that's one of a kind scene, but it really captures you. It's once again putting hundreds of lines of poetry into one scene. And here we have they're coming in, and we have him seated, and down below is the body of Hector. And let me show. I forgot to show it. You see the Hector's body down below, lying down, dead body there, right under the couch and next to the coffee table. And here is an earlier scene, and you can see him, the dark body, right on the floor. And a very, very similar scene, but done in another elegant way. So, of course, not to defend it. Actually, I should add, not to defend the painter or whoever came up with this idea. It sort of you do need clues to identification of these images. So to put the body in, then people realize, aha, that must be white hair, must be the father Priam, and people bearing gifts, and then someone lying on a couch, on a Clinae, and then you have a dead body below. So you put, it's 3 and 3 together, not 2 and 2. So it sort of confirms the suspicion it's likely the ransom of Hector. So, and the body, other than that trying to defend, the painting, I want to point out something with the Greek tradition is this is what they call nephas, which is something not right, something not customary, something against practice against the gods, and it is to have the unwashed body of Hector, unwashed body of the enemy, covered in blood and wounds, lying under the cline inside inside like your own living room. And it is rather curious, since this could not have been a Greek, but a barbaric gesture, likely further east of Greece, and perhaps, as we can see on this wall relief of the garden scene from Nineveh, which is in present-day Iraq, and from the Neo-Assyrian Empire. So this carved relief in the British Museum depicts the Assyrian king. Again, he too is lying on a cline in a couch, with his queen seated, facing him. Now they're both drinking and being served refreshments on the table, as well as from the retinue of servants approaching from the left, bearing more food and playing music. And behind the king are two women fanning. So the scene takes place under an arbor of growing, I don't know, with vines, with palms, palm leaves, and but suspended from the tree happens to be the head belonging to his enemy, the king of Elam. Now, it may not be unusual in ancient Near Eastern art to display your enemy's heads as trophies, since they could serve as warning or propaganda to their own people and audience at home and abroad, and strike terror into their hearts. And here is a pair of catalogues, i.e. drinking cup. They're really, they're like a dish, and you hold the two handles to drink. And from Greek South Italian Puglia, but they're very Greek in their look. And they are what I call a pair of gems that seem to have leapt out of the pages of the Homeric hymns to Hermes. Now, in one tondo, as you can see, Apollo again playing the cithara, and Hermes in all his paraphernalia. So I just want to, I know I drew on a little bit about Apollo in the beginning, but I just want to refresh your memory about him, as the god of music and the cithara. So here is again seated, and here's our Spreckels painted pot. And this is a calyx. So this is the inside, the tondo, and up at the top is the wall of the outside exterior of the calyx. Now, just to turn to Hermes, we haven't quite seriously met in this lecture yet. So here we are. Both Hermes and Apollo are gods, and they're sons of Zeus, although born of different mothers. One is from Leto, whom we met, Apollo, that is, and Hermes is from Maya. And here he is, grown up, dressed as a traveler, because he's a very complicated god. He has many duties and responsibilities. So he's dressed as traveler with his traveler's hat, with his mantle, and tied, at his neck, and with cloak head, and he has winged sandals, so he can go run fast. And he's leaning on his arm is his terracotta, his traveler's staff. And then he is, with his spare right hand, he's feeding his faithful hound. So we see these two gods in this pair of calyx seated and sort of looking relaxed. Now, let me tell you, welcome to the hijinks of the newborn baby and sibling rivalry. So what we have is, I don't know, I saw this a while back online, and I don't know who created this, and I thank the person, whoever drew this and put this online. This is sort of the beginning of the birth of Hermes in the Homeric hymn. So far from sort of being restful, these two brothers can sort of, in a split second, turn themselves into, sort of action heroes or action figures. And to quote from the Homeric hymn, and you can actually see it as a cartoon strip here. Born in the dawn at midnight, at midday he was playing the lyre, and in the evening he stole the cattle of far-shooting Apollo on the 4th day of the month, the day the Lady Maya gave birth to him. So, yes, this is what the hymn said, that not just from day one of his birth, from the minute he was born, he manages to, baby Hermes doesn't, remain long in his crib, but jumps out of his holy cradle, and still in his, I suppose, swaddling clothes. And then along the way, he comes upon a turtle. So you can see here. And he scoops it up and unceremoniously reduces it to a shell and repurposes it for a lyre. And so without even taking a breath, he now has invented and created a string instrument, which he then proceeds to play. Now remember, he's, less than a day old newborn. Here is his more as a boy Hermes, already with all the, his traveler's wand and his money bag, because he's a god of travelers. And then I love this because he's a bit older. However, the poor turtle is still alive. And of course, he's already wearing his winged hat because that's his traveler's hat. And now back to Hermes. So by now it's probably high noon, and with his stomach no doubt growling and a craving for food, he finds and steals 50 cows from their herd, leads them away, feeds them, and then kindles a fire to roast 2 curly-horned cows for their meat in order to satiate his hunger. Now, do bear in mind, he is just born, and he hasn't even tasted his own mother's milk. So, and the other thing is, let this not be lost on any one of us. What he's saying is, or what the Homeric hymn is saying is, that he is the first person to deliver up the fire stakes and fire. And so by tempting the art or the technique of fire and successfully starting the first barbecue. Well, unfortunately, the cattle has an owner, and the owner happens to be his half-brother, far-shooting Apollo. So what happened? Of course, the two brothers, the older brother discovers the theft and confronts his baby brother. And as expected, the latter denies it and insists on his innocence. And he's probably looked very innocent as a one-day-old baby. And so they bring the case to their father, Zeus, on Mount Olympus. So on this Etruscan hydria, a water jug, you can see on the far right Zeus and his mother Maya, his being Hermes' mother, and Hermes, baby Hermes, of course, rewrap himself in swaddling clothes and put himself on sort of a table or couch, and in front of the two of them, facing Zeus and Maya, is of course his older brother Apollo, accusing him, and he pretends, I'm a very cute baby. And now, the other thing I should probably point out is, and I made a bigger slide so you can see, it's the herd of cows that he kidnapped. You can see that they are, it's so clever, they're seen hidden in a cave, screened by an olive tree, sort of, he managed to hide them, and so that he can insist on his innocence. That if you can't find the evidence, how do you blame me? So you have on the same body of this hydria, you have really several things happening again. And what is so cute is you see a rabbit scampering up the vine, the olive tree. And so as soon as the arguments from both sides are over, this is continuation of a Homeric hymn, Zeus orders his son to be reconciled. So as a gesture of goodwill, they then exchanges gifts. Hermes presents his brother the tortoiseshell lyre. Apollo promises to secure his position in the pantheon of gods because he was just born, plus other pledges and tangible gifts. Now, this allows Hermes to grow into his attributes, wearing the brand he's known for, the hat, the staff, the walking staff, and his winged sandals. And just like the banquet seen on the Citula, on your right side, we have seated in like a symposium, but with gods and not human men. You have on the far left, Apollo with his laurel. In the middle, you see Hermes, because on his left, you see his walking staff, his terracotta. And on the far right is Dionysos with his thyrsus. And then next to them is a piper, and in front is a wine bearer, and behind is someone playing a double flute. So order is restored and imposed because Zeus the god made them reconcile. So if you think about it, hence this perfect pair of gems. They are so calm and composed and collected. So there is never a dull moment vis-a-vis art because it allows to each his own or her own. Each of us with our own experiences, memory, and imagination can conjure up different levels of appreciation. So when you go back upstairs to the Hall of Antiquities and to Rest Museum, please visit especially the Hall of Antiquities and enjoy our collection. Thank you. You're welcome. I hope I was okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I noticed, and I have no idea why, but I happen to have noticed that a lot of the fine spots for the pots that you were talking about come from Chiusi, Caire, Volci, Orvieto, Etruria. All of these are Etruscan sites, and I wondered if you would say just a word or two about why they were discovered in Etruscan tombs.
Well,
Thank you.
A lot of the Greek pots that came down to us are discovered in the Etruscan tombs is because, first of all, the Greeks, I guess they ran out of resources, so they sailed west and colonized southern Italy. So there are a lot of colonies in southern Italy, and the famous one is, of course, Apulia, just like our big volute crater with Achilles sulking. And then because of that spread, the local people, not just the colony, the local southern Italian people, they colonized, but also as you go further north into Rome, Lazio, and into what is present-day Tuscany, which were then occupied by the Etruscans. And so they saw these things and they noticed them, and then suddenly they say, oh, this is very lovely. So they either purchase them, so you have Athens would have a big export market, and hopefully there's no tariff on them. But there are these export market into Italy. I'm talking about ancient Italy, by the way. Italy to satisfy that sort of insatiable desire to own these Greek pots. And of course, the South Italians start imitating them, and they have more Greek style because they are a lot of these artisans. They're either trained or they are actually Greeks, because if you go out to colonize, generally you stay and live there, and they might have bring their trade with them. And then, of course, then it gradually spread to the north, and the Etruscan have also imitated some of these Greek pots. And some of them, it's sort of, some of them actually hard to tell the difference. And they also created other ones, but they also collected the Greek pots because it's so, to them, it's just, it's just either beautiful. There's something about them that really were attractive to the Etruscans. And so with the ancient people, as you know, a lot of times when they were buried, they're not just buried, they're buried with grave goods. So if the graves are they're not sort of broken into, or not undisturbed, I should say the word, undisturbed, then a lot of times if excavators, someone discovered them, they're still intact. And so you will see them, a lot of these are practically intact, and the paint are still literally fresh, looking fresh, I should say, on the front of these pots. It's because they were discovered in tombs, or at least buried enough, through the ages. And so they keep the liveliness, the images, as well as their freshness. And this is why a lot of these were found. And what we know about Greek pots, interesting enough, I think the evidence came more from Italy than from Greece. If you just look at the corpus of Greek vases discovered in Italy alone, I think you can do a lot of studies on it. So the Greeks, should be really great in that sense. Should be grateful to the Italians, but of course the other thing is the Italians should be grateful to Greeks because they learn a lot from the Greeks about pottery as well. Even though the Etruscans have their own bucero, and they have their own more figural painting, but nothing until they met the Greek examples that they suddenly, everything blossomed. And not to mention, can I do shameless commercial? And we are going to open an Etruscan exhibition next May here upstairs. Upstairs being the exhibition space, and it's called the Etruscans from the Heart of Ancient Italy. And it is exactly the heart of ancient Italy because the Etruscan city-states occupy what is modern-day Tuscany. And you will be very interested. This is the people who occupied Tuscany during almost the first millennium BC, until the wretched Romans sort of, conquered them. But the Romans had a way of conquering people. But yes, the unfortunate Etruscan were one of the conquered. So do come back for that exhibition when we open it in next May through to mid-September, and it will be here at the Legion of Honor, and hopefully we'll have more Etruscan exhibition. Now I see a waving hand. Oh.
I was just going to say thank you, Renee, because that was exactly the question I was going to ask, because I saw Orvieto come up a couple of times, and I know further south there were Greek colonies, but I wondered how it had made it to the Etruscan area, so thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. And no more question. Good. Thank you very much for coming, and come back for the next one.